Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, how are you? Please accept my
Wait,
humble obeisances. Hare Prabhupada.
My obeisance is also Prabhupada. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. It's nice to meet both of you. I'm going to just make sure my volume's all the way up here. So sorry, 1 second, so I can hear you.
Yeah, let us do that as well. Okay.
You got some background bird instrumental going.
Yeah, the minor
No worries.
birds. The minor birds are always on. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So,
So,
sorry.
We're excited.
Yeah.
We're excited too.
Okay.
yeah.
So we're happy that you're joining us all the way from Philadelphia, and I guess we'll just get the session started. We just started the stream, so we'll still have some people. They'll still be connecting and joining, but
Sure.
otherwise we'll just go for it. So Hare Krishna, everyone, and welcome to this evening's Bhakti Journey session. Today we're very happy to have Vrndavaneswari Radhika joining us, and she's going to be sharing her journey in Bhakti and how she came to practice Bhakti. She joined in 2012, and she's a disciple of Bhakti Swami, and she's qualified as a nutritionist, and she's deeply involved with the community, the devotional community in Philadelphia. And she sings, and she plays a flute, and she plays a harmonium, and she also gives Bhagavatam classes in the morning as well. So with that, we're very excited to have Vrndavaneswari with us this evening. So I guess to kick it off, the first question is, so how did you come to practice Bhakti? What was it that introduced you to the whole thing?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting story. So I have been interested in spiritual life for many years and was exploring different spiritual paths and kind of, one shoe's too big, one shoe's too small. Like nothing was really working for me, right? And I was actually married, and I was going through a very difficult breakup and divorce with my spouse, and it was a very painful time for me. So in the process of just praying, and I was like, God, I know you're in my heart, God. Please just bring me closer to you. I just want you to come closer to me. I'm in pain. Help me. And I was out. I like to shop at thrift stores once in a while to find some good finds and deals. And I walked into a thrift store, and I don't usually go into the book section because it's always disorganized. And I like order and organization. So I tend to just bypass the books, even though I love books and I'm a collector of books. I just usually go straight to knickknacks and things like that, or clothes. But this one day I walked in the thrift store and something pulled me over to the book section, and I just walked up to the book section, and there was a copy of Bhagavad Gita there, Bhagavad Gita as it is, Prabhupada's version. I just picked it up and I was like, I'm going to take this home. And I forgot about shopping for other things. I just went to the cash register. It was $1. And I went to the cash register and I paid, and I took it home and I started reading it, and I was like, wow, this is what I've been praying for. This, it's like God heard me. I got this book now. Now I have an opportunity to actually study what I've been feeling in my heart for a long time. So I read the Bhagavad Gita, and I was just like, wow, this is so powerful. This really resonates with me. And then I found out that there was actually a temple only at the time where I was living. It was like 40 minutes away. So I went to the temple, and I walked in, and I plopped myself down, and I'm like, okay. And that was it. And it's kind of, the night that I went there, it was college night. So some of the devotees at the temple thought I was a student, and they just kind of lumped me in with the college students, and they were, kind of introducing me to everything. And that's kind of how it all unfolded. And then after that, I kept coming back for a few Sundays, and then these two these two girls around my age came up to me and they're like, come here, come here. They're like, we've seen you a few weeks now. You know, you're obviously interested in coming more frequently. Come with us. We'll introduce you to some more people. And those girls became very dear friends of mine. And they introduced me to other people. And they introduced me to another another woman who is the secretary for Vrndavaneswari Radhika. And so she actually said, you know, we're trying to restart our morning Bhagavatam class. It kind of stalled out for a month or two. We want to start at Canto 1. Would you like to join us in the morning to read Bhagavatam together? And I said, sure, sign me up. So I started going in the morning for Bhagavatam class after like a month or two and doing the Prabhupada Arti, and just, that was it. It just was enough to kind of bring me in, and Krishna kind of hooked me. And Shraddha Prabhu gave me my first set of japa beads and taught me how to chant on beads. And yeah, and then I just kind of stayed. So
like a fish to water, it seems.
yeah, yeah, it worked for me. It works for me. So
That's so cool. That, I mean, it's like the literature. I mean, you came across the literature, and it made such a significant impact. Do you remember what particular thing stood out for you when you were reading that actually resonated with you? Because when you came to the temple, it's like, you know, you fully gave yourself to everything. So what was it that made that impact?
yeah, it was bhakti. I had been, for, you know, a while prior to finding Bhagavad Gita, I had been really feeling this concept. I didn't know a word for it. I didn't have a word to put against it, but I had this devotional desire in my heart. I was like, God, I want to know you more. I know you're in my heart. I feel you in my heart. I want to know you more. I want to serve you. I want to do more for you. And then when I opened the book and I had a word to put against it, I was like, bhakti. Oh, this is bhakti yoga. Okay, that makes sense. So it was kind of like matching what I had been feeling to this term, Bhakti Yoga. And the other thing that actually what kept me is the parampara. I had been in these different spiritual paths, and they were just so, they weren't ungrounded. And a lot of it was kind of made up. You know, it was like someone had a vision and they shared it with everyone, and, you know, and it just felt so ungrounded to me. And so when Srila Prabhupada is talking about the disciplic succession that comes through and how potent that is, to me, that gave a lot more integrity to the process. I'm like, okay, this isn't some made up process. This is scientific. This is in Shastra. This is like thousands and thousands and thousands of years old, beyond even that, right? It's beyond our conception of how far back this goes, because it's just our natural relationship with God. So it's you know, as soon as human beings come into being, we have this part and parcel in our heart of the Lord. And when we start to uncover it, that is our natural desire to pursue a relationship with God. And so, but hearing it through a disciplic succession and hearing Prabhupada always reference his previous acharyas, you know, always referencing Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, you know, always referencing the prior acharyas, gave me faith in the process that this is something that's been brought down and passed down. It's rich. It's rich, and it has tremendous amount of integrity. And I think that's what really kept me there, as opposed to just saying, okay, I have bhakti now, I'm going to go do this by myself. Because the idea of having a teacher that can teach me more deeply the process of bhakti was very attractive to me.
So it was also that having the lineage, the validity and the authority of a sound lineage behind the literature also, that gave that support. So that's nice.
Yeah,
that's nice.
pretty important.
Yeah.
And then the community of devotees obviously also played an integral role in inspiring you. I mean, I'm sure when you came, like when you came initially, were there things that you found to be like challenging or a little strange? Like, was the meditation like, okay, no, this is like a bit weird now? Like, or was it all just like, it just kind of fit in place and it just made sense?
I mean, it fell in place, but there was also some things as a Westerner coming into a temple that were a little foreign to me. I mean, obviously deity worship was a whole thing that it took me a while to wrap my head around and really feel that connection. because it was a new concept for me. And I come from a Christian background. So, you know, in my Christian understanding, deity worship was idol worship, and that wasn't appropriate. And so when I it took me, I have to admit, it took me a couple of years actually to get a better understanding of deity worship in terms of how it ties into bhakti. And now I feel, you know, I have a relationship with the deities and, you know, doing seva, but it took me a while. And the other thing too is culturally in our Philadelphia town, it's predominantly, there's not very many Western bodied people there. We have a lot of mostly Indian bodied people in our temple, and that was new for me actually. And I've traveled all around, you know, so it wasn't a big deal, but it was just a change for me because I was hearing Hindi and Bengali being spoken all around me, and you know, so I got stepped out from Philadelphia where I was like, yo, what's going on? You know? And I stepped into the ISKCON Philadelphia temple, and it's like, it's just like all these different languages. I'm like, wow, this is great. I loved it actually. And you know, it's really the Matajis. There was a group of women that are all around my age, and they were actually getting together regularly, and they invited me into their core group, which was really a loving, sweet gesture. That they invited me into their core group of Matajis that, you know, just got together outside of the community at each other's homes and had potlucks and, you know, just talked about life and Krishna consciousness, and they all had kids and just talking about all of the things. And it was really, those relationships really is a soft landing. It brought me in, it gave me a very beautiful support network instantly, you know. And then the Shraddha, who is Vrndavaneswari Prabhu's assistant, she also, I mean, she provided such a foundation for me with reading Bhagavatam and coming in the morning and doing the arti. So she helped me understand the deity worship aspect just because I was the repetition of coming to meet her and fostering that friendship and fostering the relationship with Srimad Bhagavatam in the morning, that it really, it helped me develop a relationship as well with coming to the temple and with the deities and with Srila Prabhupada, and as I was continuing to read his books as well. So.
And it's really interesting to note. It's like in all of our bhakti sessions, I think most of them, all of the speakers have mentioned how the community of devotees have actually played such an integral role in them actually, taking more steps in bhakti, and also just connecting more deeply with it. So the community sense is also it's such an essential component in our.
It's huge. It really is. Sadhu Sangha, you know, it's having the association of devotees is critical for our spiritual life. It really is.
And so you are also a professional, like you study for 4 years as Western herbalism, and you're also a nutritionist. So you were attending the Bhagavatam classes daily. So how did you balance your work and attending the Bhagavatam classes and the chanting and that transition?
Well, I've worked for myself for a very long time. That makes it a little more flexible. So being self-employed, and I was actually a grad student. Well, when I first came to the temple, I was about to start my going into my master's degree and doctoral program. So I had 5+ years ahead of schooling, but I was also self-employed throughout that time as well. And still more or less am. I have contract work that I do, but it's still on my own clock. It's at my own office here in Philadelphia. So that's how I've been able to manage that. As being self-employed, it certainly has its ups and downs. You know, one of them is that you don't always have the same income coming in every month, but one of the huge benefits is that I have been able to interweave bhakti and my spiritual practice into my life. So I can, in the middle of the day, if I'm between patients, I'll in my office sit in my chair and I can chant 5 rounds, you know, and just take a half hour, 45-minute break and just relax, you know, or you know, in the morning I'll give Bhagavatam class to another community, actually another ISKCON temple about 2 hours from here. They invited me to give Bhagavatam class there every other week. And so I do that, and then I can jump onto work again. And, you know, so I have a lot of fluidity in my life, and that was by design because I always knew that spiritual life was going to be the top priority and that anything that I did vocationally had to be able to work with that somehow. So being self-employed was always a goal, and I became self-employed very early in my 20s. Actually, I became self-employed, and it was a bumpy road. Don't get me wrong, it's not an easy road. But it was always, I was always determined to maintain that lifestyle so that I could have flexibility to also travel. When I came to South Africa a few years ago. Yeah, I've been to South Africa a number of times actually, but I came to South Africa for the Bhakti Journey book for the BBT Africa conference in 2015. So I was able to like kind of just jump on a plane, come down for the weekend, and do that because I have flexibility in my work life. So.
I appreciate very much that idea that you plan your life around your spirituality. You know, I think it's a novel idea, and it looks a lot of people. Okay, not everyone may have the option to.
Right.
Sometimes life sort of pushes us into a certain direction. But I'm of the opinion that when you really want it, you know, that to have your survival mechanisms and your spiritual life flow together, then those choices come where you get to choose, you know. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and like I said, it's not an easy road all the time. I mean, Krishna gives me plenty of opportunities to be tested. So, you know, he's, what's he gonna do now? You just, you know, you had this happen or this happen. What are you gonna do? And I'm like, no, I'm still gonna, you know, I'm still gonna maintain autonomy in my life and work, that I can have the flexibility. And, you know, it's not perfect. I do work a lot, and I admit, you know, I do have a very busy work life, but it's flexible so that I can do the things I want to do with my spiritual life and with my husband and things like that. So there's always trying to get that balance in there.
But it's really it sounds. I mean, of course, it's you know, undoubtedly it comes with its challenges, but it's nice in the sense that like it allows you that opportunity where you don't get so drained out from your work, you know, because a lot of people, even though they may be practitioners, they have that experience where they're in their job, like it's a 9 to 5, and then they just get zapped, and then when they come home, it's like, you know, they're just gonna read for like maybe 1 minute or something. They're gonna pass out and whatever. So it sounds quite nice actually.
Yeah, I mean, there's work to be done. There's certainly, I still have a lot more I need to do to bring more balance into my work and spiritual life. But at least I know I have the tools. I have the lifestyle carved out. It's just a matter of constantly, you know, retooling it. So.
Shall we ask Abhir's question? Yeah.
Which one? Abhir's been shooting questions.
Abhir is one of our regulars. He attends, you know, all of our weekend sessions. So he's got some questions here. He's okay. I think okay. He's got 3 questions in one.
Maybe choose one.
Yeah. I think maybe okay. The 2, right? Have you been to Vrindavan? And how did you realize it was time for initiation from your spiritual master?
Great. Good questions, Abhir. No, I haven't been to Vrindavan. I want to go someday, but Krishna keeps taking me other places. I don't know. I'm assuming some point I'll get to Vrindavan. I really want to go someday, so I hope so. I'm like, Krishna's my travel agent. I was like, I want to go, but he'll like take me to Dubai, you know, to Dubai, to Bangladesh or to South Africa. But I was like, I want to go to India. That just never seems to unfold yet, but I'm sure in due time. How did I know that I was ready for initiation? I think that it was first finding my Guru Maharaj. That was the first step, and knowing that I had found the right person to guide me. His Holiness Bhakti Swami, my Guru Maharaj. When I realized that he was the one that I wanted to be my spiritual teacher. After that, it was just a process of getting connected with him and building a relationship with him. And that was really, I had spent a long time praying, deeply praying for a spiritual teacher and talking to different people and, you know, different, you know, swamis or, you know, initiating gurus and within ISKCON. And I just, Bhakti Swami came to me as someone that was going to be the right fit for me for my spiritual life. And so when I reached out to him, and it was through the grace of Krishna that when I found out that one of his disciples lives in Philadelphia, and it's a family that I've become close with over the years. But they made the arrangement that he was coming into town a few months later, and they made an arrangement that I could meet with him at their house. And so that kind of solidified. I'm like, okay, this is the person I want to take shelter in. And it took a couple of years, but it was worth the wait, and having him constantly guiding me by email and in person was always just such an amazing blessing. So yeah.
I know it's this the whole spiritual master thing has been on Abir's mind for some time now. I think,
It's a big decision.
But what would you say? What would you say is as a disciple is an essential? Are the essential things that allow us to actually tap into, really gaining a lot out of the relationship with the spiritual master?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is surrender, right? And that's something I've always struggled with, right? Because I'm very bullheaded and stubborn, and my Guru Maharaj knew that from the get-go. In fact, in one of his emails to me, he's like, "You're probably going to do whatever you want anyway, but here's my suggestion." I'm like, "Oh, he called me out." But it is a process of at least accepting that there's someone that can guide you in your spiritual life, and really taking that time to cultivate a relationship by, if they've written books, reading their books, listening to their classes. That's always a big one, listening to classes, going to as many retreats or in-person things as you can, connecting by email. That my Guru Maharaj was always so amazing with email. I just don't know how he found the time, but he always emailed me back, and that was a pest. But he was amazing. Yeah. So just developing that relationship is through those different methods is really important, and really recognizing that, he or she, now we can, but the guru has an opportunity, has the ability to guide the disciple, and the guru-disciple relationship is so personal. And so building that relationship and getting to know the guru, and the guru getting to know the disciple will only help us grow closer to Krishna and grow more in our Krishna consciousness.
I think also like an essential and another, a sort of thing in our consciousness when we're approaching the relationship with the spiritual master is also just that element of actually acknowledging that we need the guidance. Like, I know at least for myself, it's like I was studying and then, I came across so many things in so many different courses, and I never found it like satisfying. And the things that the lecturers also, their character it wasn't inspiring either. So for me, that was also just like, it's the character of the person, they living what they're saying. There's no like double standards or anything. So it was also just for me to also just admit, like, that I actually need that guidance as well. So
we can't do it on our own.
Yeah, it's just like, such an essential thing in the relationship. Because you're always giving Bhagavatam class, and what would you say is your favorite thing about Bhagavatam?
Well, it's nectarian. I mean, I love, one of the things about the Bhagavatam, we're learning about the pastimes of Krishna, we're learning about the different incarnations of Krishna, and we're also learning about the devotees of Krishna, the devotees of Vishnu, right? So that's beautiful too. So, Maharaj Ambarish, right? So you think about King Ambarish, and he's such an exalted devotee, and everything he does is for the Lord. Every step he takes is walking to the temple. His hands are, to read. His mind, his eyes, everything is for the benefit and service of the Lord. So we can learn from these exalted devotees and exalted personalities how to practice bhakti. And it gives us role models. And I've said this many times in Bhagavatam class, that we all need role models, and we can choose, some actor or musician or politician, or we can choose role models that are within our spiritual path, and we can get role models from Bhagavatam. We can find role models from our peers, from other devotees, from our spiritual master, and from Srila Prabhupada. But having these different ways to get the understanding of bhakti, and also to see what difficulties come out, because in Bhagavatam there's a lot of difficulties that arise too. It's not just a cakewalk. I mean, it's not like, okay, these are exalted devotees, they're perfect, boom, done, next chapter, right? I mean, there's so many instances where you have a great sage that falls down, and then he becomes very bewildered by material life, and then he has to get himself back into a lifetime. After a long time goes by, thousands of years go by, and he's sense gratification, and then he finally realizes that the ultimate goal in life is actually spiritual life after all, right? Even after he was this great sage, comes down, goes back up. So you can see that the difficulties that occur even with these exalted personalities, and for me it gives a little bit of hope. I'm like, okay, well, if a great sage can have difficulties and be so allured by material life, then at least I can try my best, but I know that it's difficult, right? So it gives me some examples of that. And then of course with Srimad Bhagavatam, we're also getting an understanding of Krishna, right? Because the 10th canto, it's the example that Prabhupada has given is, if you want to know how to please someone, you want to get to know them and know what they like and who they associate with. And when we read the 10th canto about Krishna's pastimes, we're knowing about Krishna. We're learning about him. We're learning about his pastimes. We're learning about the demons he killed and all the adventures. And we're also learning about the people that the devotees he associated with, and what he likes, his favorite foods. He loves cows, all of these things. So that can help us worship him more when we learn more about Krishna. So the Bhagavatam the Bhagavatam is rich with so much nectar for us to just absorb. And so that's why reading these different pastimes is so important, I think, because it gives us so much nectar that we can compare in our own life, we can learn from, and we can also grow closer to Krishna too.
Wow. She really loves the Bhagavatam.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's really coming through there. But one thing though is, like, when with the Bhagavatam, there's so many things that, like, sort of that we're not used to, like in our modern society. Like, there's so many practices, like, just welcoming somebody into into
All the rituals, right?
yeah, it's like a whole thing. Like, they throw in grains, and there's sprinkling of scented water, and it's like there's so many different things in the Bhagavatam. Like, that's just one example, and then there's other things of, like, kings having many wives, and like there's the whole big marriage ceremony, and then. So how did you manage to fit all of that, like, nicely, and like, fix it all neatly in
I don't.
It's a good answer. It's a very good answer.
How can I can't conceive. It's too beyond me. I take it for what it is. I mean, I think that if we try to compare and we try to dissect too much, we'll become too bewildered. And some things are just left to be. And that's, in my opinion, some things are just left to be, and left to just say, okay, this is how it was then. And it's not for me to say, this is how I need to apply it in my life today. I would not be happy if my husband had 3 other wives, So, this is one of those things that, I just don't expect that I'm going to be applying everything in my daily life in Bhagavatam. But what it does is it gives us understanding. And like I said, it's really about bringing in these personalities and understanding the play between Krishna and the demons, or understanding, Lord Ram, and, how his whole role was to be the perfect person, the perfect king, the perfect husband, the perfect person the perfect father. Like, so it's really taking a few steps back and not getting too tangled up in the details of, oh, well, this person had 3 wives and they're throwing rice every time a sage walks in the door. And, you know, I mean, I think we have to take some of that and apply it into modern life to say there's really good manners there. I mean, with the sage, the rice throwing, they have some really good respect for people in, you know, in their society, and we've maybe lost a little bit of that, and what can we learn from that. But I think that there's also, you know, each of the Bhagavatam also represents different yugas too, and in different yuga cycles there are different procedures, there are different standards, right? So you know, in Satya Yuga, when you think about Satya Yuga, is all about the meditation, and Treta Yuga is about doing rituals, and then Dwapara Yuga is deity worship. So with that comes different things, and also it's mostly kshatriyas that were having the multiple wives and doing all these things, and they're a different class that doesn't really exist anymore. Right? And they did the things, when you have these examples, they're doing it from unless they're the demons, right? So you have to be able to just you know, kind of say, okay, well, you've got like the demons and what they're doing. But when you think about the devotees and you're looking at that, you also want to realize that A, it's a different yuga, and B, it's a different class of people, and C, they're also in a higher, more elevated place, and that they have a different understanding and a different connection, and that they're more, you know, they're more Brahminical. And so what that means, so why they have this or why they have that, how could I know? Because I am definitely not that level of Brahminic, you know, Brahmin. You know, I'm just a lowly Shudra person that is trying to understand bhakti. And so I trust that these elevated personalities have, you know, their reasons for it. So
I like that you have the ability to pick up the principle and not get bewildered by the detail. I think that's an important thing, because on one level, someone can look at the Bhagavatam and say, how do I relate? Yeah. You know, how is it relatable? But it is extremely relatable, because when you look at the principle, when you look at the emotion, when you look at the philosophy, when you look at the essence of it, you know, and not get sidetracked by like, hey, this dude has 4 heads, rather, you know, rather to understand the principle, you know, like, you know.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You know, but also the world that we're living in, we embrace so much that is supernatural, you know, like from fiction to movies, like the element of supernatural that is now weaved itself in our lives is just incredible. So why not the Bhagavatam? And this has more credibility.
Exactly.
You know? So one question I wanted to ask was, because in hearing your intro, it made me remember that verse in the Bhagavad Gita about different types of people that come to bhakti, and one of them being the distressed. So I guess my question is, how much do you think it is required in our spiritual practice, or in the evolution of coming to the spiritual path, that we see that life on the material realm has to break apart a bit, has to sort of, like, our faith in like the way things work cracks, and usually it takes a crisis sort of before we're pushed to move, you know. The reason why I'm asking it is because now around the world, everyone's in some sort of crisis or the other, whether inside, outside, family, health, like whatever it is. And how to then counter that crisis? Is this a question? I'm not sure, but I hope you get what I'm saying.
No, I hear your question, definitely. And I think it's you're asking whether or not it's a requirement to become what we become materially, kind of just completely materially just flattened, you know, that's done with everything. And I think that, you know, in Bhagavatam, in the first canto, and especially in Queen Kunti's prayers, right, we know that she is saying, okay, you know, everything's gone, taking everything away from me, take it all, because it brings us to that level of surrender, Are we all going to get knocked over and flattened in order to come to a deeper place in bhakti? I don't know. I think it's an individual journey, and it depends on how far along we are, because we don't know how much we've brought from other lifetimes. None of us actually truly knows where we are in our bhakti. And that's the thing that's important to remember, is because we have lifetime after lifetime after lifetime that we are carrying with us into this lifetime of some practice. And so what's our spiritual bank account? We don't know. We don't actually know what's in that little piggy bank of ours. We just know that there's probably something in there. And that, some of us may have come into this lifetime with a very full spiritual bank account. Some may have come in with less. And so we are all in different stages of bhakti. Even though we may come in and look like we're all at the stage, we're all at different places in our spiritual practice. And I think that's one thing that I always remind people of too, is that we don't know where someone is truly in their devotional practice. And so material exhaustion is a symptom, I guess, of that final level of coming to that final level of surrender. However, I think that Krishna gives us plenty of opportunities to pull back from spiritual life after we've been on the path of bhakti for a little bit. I think there's that, kind of romance period that a lot of people that come into bhakti, they have like, everything is great. I definitely had that. I was like,
the honeymoon phase.
The honeymoon phase, exactly. And then once that honeymoon phase kind of fades, and then you're in the day-to-day of chanting rounds and getting up and going to the temple and working, and life stress comes in, and sometimes things can get a little bit dull. And so we have to figure out how to reignite that. But we also, Krishna is also testing us to see if we're going to come back. And so it's part of that process. And sometimes we might get materially exhausted. We might have something in our life that brings us back in. And in my example, I did have, a very shocking event in my life that kind of flattened me and finally kind of brought me to the place of bhakti. But I don't know if that's how some people come. There's different ways people can approach bhakti. Intelligence, right? You can have people that are coming in from, from complete destruction. So yeah. I hope that answers your question. I don't know.
Yeah, it does. And I appreciate that answer. And that example of Queen Kunti, that, unless one is materially exhausted, it's hard to approach with real sincerity. And she mentions high birth, education. So there's the education card, and you're a pretty educated woman, So and it's saying that if we have faith in just a material sort of standard of education, then we can't approach with sincerity. So how do you see that? How do you digest that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's we have to operate in this material world, right? So something brought us into this material world again from our last lifetime. We obviously didn't quite get there to get ourselves, out of this material existence. However, we have to do things, and Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, we have to do things to maintain ourselves materially. But also in Nectar of Instruction, we know that it's a Shri Ishopanishad that we should not take more than our quota. So we have to be doing enough to maintain ourselves, but to not be greedy with it. In my experience with my life, yes, I do have a lot of degrees. I actually have 2 master's degrees and a doctorate. So
oh my God.
I've always been a bit of
way through 1, like 2.
Yeah, I've always been a bit of a school junkie. I love to learn, but I also, in the field that I chose to pursue for my vocation, and something that I care very deeply about, that I also tried in my area help devotees with is health. And so having my doctorate in nutrition and practicing in the integrative health field gives me the opportunity to help people and help them in a way that is not, it just helps bring their health a little bit better. I actually did a class with the Vaishnavi ministry in North America, and that class was on women's health issues. And so I've always wanted to use my education in in natural health and healing to be able to help devotees too. And so that's always been one of my goals. But right now it's also my vocation. So, you know, for a while.
I have one burning question just from a personal perspective. Do you find, because I can see you're into the Shastra, it's something that really feeds you, right? So do you find that there's a shift between the attitude that we use in studying the nature of this world and degrees and then the attitude that we need when we're studying spiritual subjects?
So let me make sure I'm understanding your question. So you're asking if there's a shift from studying material versus studying Shastra?
Yes. I love the way she just simplifies my nonsense. Could I have a miniature version of you in my computer every time I have to write? It would be really nice, like one of those Grammarly things. Okay, sorted.
I'm a good Googler too, because you just kind of bring it up, right? Yeah, so I think when I'm approaching, and this is a balance that I've had to take in my own life, especially. Oh, is there a bird in there?
There's easels around. Okay.
Wow.
We'll survive.
Be careful.
No, they're little fly thingies. It's just the windows we're closing.
Okay, good. So
welcome to America. It's dangerous here.
I see that. It's such pressure. I think that in studying, and it's something I've always had to talk myself through, is when I was in grad school, especially when I was doing my doctoral program, and I was also doing Bhakti Shastri at the same time as my doctoral.
Oh my God.
I had this like bouncing back and forth, and you know, I remember going through a period where I was talking myself through it, saying, don't get so hung up on the science and the doctorate. It's important, but this Bhakti Shastri is more important. Like, you know, I constantly am having because I can go into research rabbit holes. I love to do research, and I happily, if I have someone come to me with a condition that is a little bit foreign, I'll happily just dive into a rabbit hole of research to figure out what they have going on. And so I'm constantly trying to balance my own proclivities to make sure that I'm not getting too, it's a dance, right? I always say this, like everything in life is a dance. And we just sometimes we're going to be more, in my experience, sometimes I am more in the material space, sometimes I'm more in the spiritual space, and it's a regular reflection to see where I'm at. And that's where like journaling and reflection, prayer can be really beneficial too, that we can kind of get a self-inventory going once in a while to see how deeply involved we are in different things and where we might need to shift our energies.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate
it. Absolutely.
Came back. We've just got a number of bugs flying.
Flying creatures around us. It's okay though. To be very cool and composed,
like,
that there's
they're
nothing
not
happening.
buzzing past us.
Oh no, I saw that. I saw one go flying right past you.
Yeah, they hatch in the evening, and then their wings drop off, and then the birds have some nice snacks in the morning.
Yeah, a 24-hour life cycle.
Yeah.
That's all some creatures have.
Well, South Africa has lots of wildlife, so.
Yeah, including us.
I wanted to ask though, it's like, you know, in a spiritual practice, like you were mentioning, like, you know, with work and with spirituality, it's like, you know, you got to find that kind of balance. And then there's also like a type of balance, like a mental type of balance that we have in approaching spiritual practice, because sometimes we can come in, right, and then we can get a little mental with making progress, and we feel like we should be somewhere, and we see like ideals in other people, but we don't see their struggle behind it, of how they actually, where they are at. And so how do you sort of balance yourself? Because you sound really balanced. I want to know how to do
Some
that.
days. It depends on a good day. No, I think that I've battled with that a lot over the years, and I think, and I tend to push myself a lot anyway. It's my personality. Um, but I've had to really reevaluate how I want to measure my spiritual progress, and it's in measuring it and comparing myself constantly to other devotees. I realized that was very destructive to my spiritual life, is because I was always just seeing what I wasn't. And when I'm only seeing what I'm not, then I'm going to always come up short. And so it takes, I do it even now. I still have to remind myself, like, you are a different person. And it's something when I was, when I gave the class to the Vaishnavi ministry, my kind of closing remarks were that we all are different people. We all have different things in our lives. We all have different backgrounds. We have different responsibilities. We have different karma. We have different astrology, if you want to get to that level too, right? So it's really important that not only we be kind with ourselves, but also with each other, that, we're not expecting, oh, that person, they're not doing enough service, or they're not doing enough this, or, they should be taking initiation by now. What's wrong with them? And I think that kind of thinking and talk is really dangerous, because that spiritual creeper, like the Bhakti Lata, right? We have to be really careful that the spiritual creeper is protected, and it will be most protected when we water and nurture it. And so I use this example a lot when I'm giving classes. It's I give the example of like a little sapling. So you might have a space in your yard that's getting too much sunshine, and you want to put a tree on so that you have shade there. So maybe you plant a little sapling, but obviously the sapling is not going to give you much shade this year, maybe not even next year. Do you yell at it? Do you tug on its branches and say, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you growing? No, of course not. We water it. We give it fertilizer. You make sure it gets plenty of sunshine, and you trust that someday the tree will grow on its own, because it's gotten all of those things to keep it nurtured and nourished. And that's the same thing for us as in our spiritual life, is that we have to just keep giving ourselves, watering the roots, giving ourselves that nourishment, physical, spiritual, emotional, mental, all of that we continue to give ourselves nourishment, and eventually we'll grow. It's not a forced thing. And sometimes we might go a little bit backwards too, that there's going to be, some ebbs and flows in progress. A plane will come up to, plane will go up, but sometimes it comes down for a little bit, before it goes up again. And so you might have to go up really high. You might be on a period in your life where you can just go take off, but at some point you may be hovering. At some point you might drop back a little bit and say, okay, this is all I can do right now at this point in my life, and accepting that, because we have to maintain our own health too. And I've seen so many people burn out their health. I did it to myself. I mean, I got myself so overdone that I started having health issues. And I'm like, this isn't what I'm promoting. Like, this isn't what I'm about. I'm promoting health to people, and I'm doing it to myself. So I really started to dial it back and say, okay, what's important? My health is important for my sadhana. If I don't feel good, my sadhana will suffer. And Prabhupada has a great quote, which I used for my class with the Vaishnavi ministry, is, if you have poor health, everything else will be topsy-turvy. And it's true. So if we don't take care of our health, and we don't nurture our heart, with kindness, and we are constantly beating ourselves up and being unfair and comparing, then what we're doing is we're not watering that creeper, that Bhakti Lata Bij, and that's going to suffer. Our spiritual life will suffer, and we can't force ourselves to grow that way.
What I find is this whole beating up thing comes under this guise of like a fake level of humility. Like, no, this is what it means. Yeah. To be humble. It's not like an outsaid thing. It's more like an inner belief system that, like, no, it's like, if I put myself down, that means I'm humble. And sometimes it's just about accepting the things that I do that is positive, and accepting the steps that I take in the right direction, and just accepting those things, you can actually accept, like, okay, I'm at this space now, and it actually takes a lot of maturity, actually, spiritually. because we see these great ideals in the Bhagavatam, in people around us, and then it was like, oh well, it's, you know, it's 10 minutes and I'm not a pure devotee yet. You know?
No. It's terrible. And this is the thing, you know, there's, you know, we accept the things that are favorable for devotional service and we reject those that are unfavorable. But that applies also, and this actually came to me from a guru. So I was actually speaking with someone that's an initiating guru, and I asked him a question about balance. He said, accept the things that are favorable for Krishna consciousness and reject those that are unfavorable. And he said, even things within ISKCON. So he meant it not that we reject ISKCON, but we that if the principle of doing 15 hours a week of service, if that is hurting us, then that's not favorable for our devotional life, even if that's supposed to be what we're doing.
Yeah.
So that's unfavorable for devotional life. If maintaining a quiet, calm home sadhana helps nourish us, then that's favorable for our bhakti. So we accept that. So it's constantly making sure if we are, and I experienced this firsthand, so I can tell you, if our mood in service and if our mood in bhakti is starting to decline, if it's starting to go the wrong direction, something's wrong.
Something's wrong.
Something is wrong. It should be going up. And we're all going to have our ups and downs, right? But if we all have our good days and bad days, but if it's steadily, like over like months, even years, if our mood is starting to go down, our attitude is starting to decline, then something's wrong. And then it's time to take a step back and reevaluate. Am I doing too much? Am I pushing myself too hard? Am I not getting rest? Am I not getting good rounds in? Because japa is the foundation, right? So we talk about Srimad Bhagavatam. We talk about, you know, going to class and going to the temple. Well, what is our Yuga Dharma? The Yuga Dharma is chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. If we do not maintain good japa, everything else is going to be on a very, very shaky foundation. So japa is foundational. We have to maintain a good sadhana. If our sadhana is rushed just to get to the next thing, we're squeezing it in, you know, then everything else is just going to be really unsettled.
Yeah, that's the truth. Tried and tested.
So true.
I like how you unpacked everything. It was just like, I asked one simple question. It was like, it was really nice because you touched on so many things that like we actually experience and actually go through, and like what I'm taking away from your answers that it's also just coming to that point of acceptance of where you are at, and like just sort of like kind of mentally accepting it and being kind to yourself and allowing yourself to actually gradually make that progress, but also, you know, not being lethargic in the process, also just, you know, endeavoring as well, but not becoming mental about the whole thing.
Exactly. Because that can be really, you know, it can also cause us to be fanatical too. And we have to be aware of getting a little too, you know, that's not good for us either.
He has a question. No. We only have 9 minutes left, but like I don't know where the time went.
In 30 seconds.
And Siobhan also has a question.
Okay, no, let's take Siobhan.
Oh, you know, wait to ask a question.
No, but okay.
Siobhan.
My question is this, you know, this idea of self-kindness. I struggle to see where it is in the Shastra. I intuitively know I need to practice it, but I struggle to, the other side of my brain says, oh yeah, but this is just new agey, wishy-washy stuff like that you're just projecting. So how do I see self-kindness as an element that I need to absorb from the Shastra?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that if we were to read Bhagavad Gita and think about the lessons in Bhagavad Gita about devotional life, Krishna gives us, you know, in I believe the 17th or 18th chapter, Krishna gives us a roadmap. If you can't do this, do this. If you can't do this, do this. If you can't do this, do this. Right? So he gives us so many opportunities to come in where we're at, right? But that we should always be loving him. This is a love relationship. And if we remember what bhakti truly is, and what all of bhakti, you know, what this middle section, which is bhakti yoga, if we remember what bhakti truly is, it's a loving devotional relationship with God, there has to be love there. So actually, it is in the Shastra everywhere. If you remember what the true purpose of bhakti is love. It's a loving devotional relationship. We love ourselves. If we don't have love for ourselves, how can we have a loving relationship with someone else, especially with Krishna? So that is the bhakti. It's a two-way relationship. And we also have to remember that love is the topmost part of that relationship.
Okay, Shiva.
I mean, but isn't it? I mean, it's also. I mean, just sorry, we get to that.
We host these sessions for us.
We inspire ourselves, but we get good response. But it's just. I mean, like, you know, thinking on that point of self-kindness, and I really like that you know that you highlighting the, you know, that Krishna's providing these entry points within the Bhagavad Gita. And I'm just thinking also, it's just that, you know, like, I think part of it, like a component of it also is just acknowledging that we're so minute, and that, like, we have to rely on Krishna. Like, we have to rely on the spiritual master, because if we think that by our own strength, by our own endeavor, that we're gonna make it, then it's like, you know, it's not gonna work out.
Exactly.
So I think that the kindness in a sense, like the extension of it is just is acknowledging that we're so minute, and that we actually have to also we have to reach out for grace, and it's by grace we become empowered. It's by grace that we can you know do anything. So
Absolutely. And that's the surrender. Absolutely. Is that, you know, Krishna is everything that, you know, he gives us everything we need. He is our ultimate provider. He's also our ultimate well-wisher. And when we start to see Krishna in everything that we do, we will be happy and things will come naturally to us. So when we see that Krishna is in everything, Krishna's in our heart, he is guiding us, and he's even, there's, you know, everything that happens does not happen without Krishna somehow in the mix. So when we surrender to that, we recognize everything in our lives is that process, and our spiritual master is there guiding us, and Srila Prabhupada is there guiding us, that everything is because, yes, we are part and parcel of God. We are part and parcel, that we are, yes, we are lower than a blade of grass. That means also that we are completely dependent on the Lord. And so when we become dependent, and we know that dependency brings us everything we need, then we have also less anxiety. And so much of beating ourselves up is anxiety, right? Because we're anxious that we're not this or we're not that. And so when we are truly surrendered to the Lord, that anxiety gets washed away. And so then everything is just about serving Krishna. And that's love, right?
That's a very powerful point. Please remember.
Okay. Now we have 4 minutes. Okay, so bad. You want to read his question? Yeah.
Which one?
The first one.
With studying and work and spiritual life and our duties, how can we find a place of calm in between everything? I think you've tackled it quite a bit, but maybe you have some last 1 minute on that one.
Yeah. Shivan he's a student. He's in his first year of university, and he's a BCom student. So he's coming from that student.
Absolutely. Yeah, with studying, I mean, having been in grad school for a long time, I know that, you know, taking breaks and finding those places to bring spiritual life in is really important, and weaving it in too. So that japa, I mean, to me, japa is really the best thing we can do. Japa, kirtan, reading Bhagavad Gita, those are all things that can bring us a sense of peace and balance. Japa is a meditation. Japa is meant to help connect us to Krishna. So when we do japa as our breaks, then that will also give us a peace of mind, and give us, you know, a spiritual connection that hopefully will hold us through. And also remembering that if we decide that everything we do in our life is, you know, we come to the place of, I want to do this for my spiritual life. I'm doing this to serve Krishna. I'm doing this all, you know, for the point of cultivating my spiritual life. Even the material things, the schooling and all those things, those are all important, Because like I said, we still have to maintain ourselves, and not everyone has the same vocation, right? And Krishna tells us that in Bhagavad Gita, that it's according to our propensity that, you know, that we have to carry out our duties, you know, according to our propensity. So this is the vocation. This is where it comes in, and how we maintain ourselves. So it's remembering also, if we remember that we are spirit soul, we are part and parcel of God, then we're maintaining ourselves through a vocation, but we're also remembering that when we surrender, that we maintain ourselves spiritually, and that's the ultimate aim.
Yeah,
We're gonna get.
we have 2 more minutes left.
Okay.
And then Instagram is gonna cut off. But it was absolutely brilliant speaking with you.
Thank you.
It was, yeah.
It's just amazing how sessions keep giving us like what we need exactly when we need it. It's just really awesome.
Yeah, I liked it. So it's like we spoke about so many things that, like, you know, that you actually experience and that you actually encounter in a spiritual practice. And like, you know, we really appreciate that, you know, you were just so honest and that you opened yourself up to just like sharing everything with us, you know. And I don't know, it's
Two strangers across the other side of the world.
but it's like, it feels so positive, and it's just like, you know, really positive energy.
And I want to say you have the most beautiful smile.
Oh, thanks.
And yeah, I appreciate like how you made this connection with the Bhagavatam. I admire that a lot.
Oh, thank you.
So,
yeah. Well, it's been such a lovely opportunity. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for Krishna Rupa for reaching. I know she's on there. So, but this has been a wonderful opportunity to speak with both of you. And I know that the fact that you're in the universities and you know, introducing bhakti to students is beautiful. So keep doing what you're doing, all the amazing work. And I know that you guys will be very successful down there. So thank you again for including me in that.
Hare Krishna.
thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Abir is also saying thank you for all of the points that you mentioned as well. Okay, so we're definitely gonna get cut off now. So Hare Krishna, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.